Last time, steel learned our names. The wall of conduit stood straight, clamps tight, junction boxes lined like ribs. Harris said bones do not forgive. Today he pointed at the small devices that people touch every day and said these are where a building meets a hand. If we make a mistake here, the metal does not scream. A person does. The benches were cleared. Trays of devices waited in perfect rows. Duplex receptacles, GFCI receptacles, a few AFCI breakers for comparison, tamper-resistant outlets with shuttered faces, single-pole and three-way switches, one four-way, a dimmer, a torque screwdriver, wire strippers, a multimeter, a simple 3-light tester, pigtails coiled like little commas, green ground screws, and a stack of cover plates that looked harmless until you imagined smoke curling from their edges. Harris stood behind the trays like a surgeon at the table. Harris's paper gave you orders. Steel gave you bones. Its devices give you consequences. What is polarity? To brass neutral to silver, ground to green. He slid a duplex toward me and tapped each screw with the tip of his driver. Brass on the hot side. Silver on the neutral side. Green at the yoke. I felt the rule settle in the way a bend line settles under your boot. Maria, and if we flip hot and neutral, reverse polarity, the metal shell of a lamp goes hot, not the center contact. Touch the shell in a sink, and you learn voltage through your ribs. Harris, remember that. People do not forgive reversed polarity either. He pointed at the small brass link on the duplex. Harris, what is the tab? I hesitated, a feed-through link. Break the tab on the brass side, and you can split the receptacle. Sometimes top half switched, bottom half always hot. Don't break the silver tab unless the wiring and handle-tied breakers demand it. If you snap the wrong tab, you replace the device. You do not glue back your mistake. Maria cracked a smile and twirled a green pigtail like a piece of spaghetti. Maria ground first, always. Bond the metal box, then the device. The ground is the last offense, so we connect it first. He placed a GFCI beside the duplex, the buttons sitting like two small eyes. Harris, line and load. X. Line is the incoming hot and neutral that feed the GFCI. Load is the downstream that you want protected. Reverse them, and the face may still power, but protection lies to you. Maria, so the test button is not a guarantee. It is a clue, not a contract. Confirm with the tester. He handed me a 3-light tester and nodded toward the mock-up wall. The training panel clicked on. 2 amber lights glowed. Correct polarity. He crooked a finger for me to speak the interpretation out loud. I did, and I hated how relieved I sounded. Harris. Now fail on purpose. I reversed hot and neutral for the next box and watched one light glow the wrong way. The legend on the tester told a short story about danger. We shut it down and corrected it, landing hot on brass, neutral on silver, ground to green, looped clockwise so the tightening screw pulls the copper in, not out. Maria, why clockwise? Because wrong direction pushes the loop away and leaves you with a loose connection that heats up. Heat travels faster than apologies. He replaced the duplex with a tamper-resistant face. Harris, why tamper-resistant? Because shutters keep foreign objects out. A house has 1,000 curiosities for a child. The shutter makes curiosity slower than survival. We move to switches. Single pole with 2 brass screws. 3-way with 2 brass travelers and a dark common. A 4-way with 2 pairs of travelers passing through like a secret handshake. Harris. Name the parts common. Travelers ground. A dimmer is a control on the hot leg, not on the neutral, and it must match the load type and wattage. Ganging dimmers together derates them. Sometimes the fins come off. Remove the fin, reduce the rating, label it so no one guesses wrong later. Maria rolled the torque screwdriver in her palm. Maria, what about just tight enough by feel? Feeling is not a spec. Manufacturer torque is. Under tight, and the copper warms by friction. Over tight, and you crush the conductor or crack the device. Use torque. Tools that look like toys bury careers. We practiced building pigtails. Landing grounds first to the box, then to the device. Tightening with the torque driver. Loops set clockwise. Strip length trimmed to the gauge so no copper peeks past a screw head. We checked box fill while we worked, counting conductors and pigtails and the device volume, so we never forced a forest of wires into a volume-sized foregrass. Harris, quiz. Hot to neutral? Should read what? 120 volts. Harris. Hot to ground? 120. Harris, neutral to ground? 0. If a neutral shows voltage to ground, something is loose, shared, backed, or simply wrong. You took us to the three-way mock-up. 2 switches controlling a hallway light. He touched the dark screw. Harris, which one is this? Common. Travelers go on the other 2. We named them and then wired the pair. The light obeyed both switches like a secret only we knew. Maria exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for a week. He killed the power and set a GFCI into the first box of a pair, landing line only. We energized and pressed test. It tripped. The lamp on the downstream box stayed lit because it had its own feed. He nodded and asked for protection to reach the second box. We de-energized, landed the load to feed the next box, labeled it, powered up, tripped the upstream, watched the downstream go dark. Harris. Why label? Because the next person to touch this must know it's protected. Words save lives when drawings are buried in drywall. We moved to a split receptacle example. Break the brass tab on the duplex. Leave the neutral silver tab intact. Hot feed pigtails to the switch common and the lower hot. The switched leg returns to the upper hot. Neutral stays continuous. Ground is bonded. The top half clicked on, and off with the switch. The bottom half stayed ready for the vacuum. It felt like a magic trick you were now responsible for. Maria, what about backwiring? Backstab relies on a spring that loosens with heat and time. A loose spring is an argument with a coroner. Use the screw terminals. He told us a story that tasted like ash. Cafe opened beautifully. All white plates and new paint. They backstabbed devices to save time. 6 months later, the owner smelled the story those springs had written. Warm plates, charred plastic, a line of outlets with crescent-shaped burns. 3 weeks of closure and every device replaced with screw-landed conductors and torque-checked. No one thinks about the spring after the first day. The fire does. We return to test discipline. Lock out, tag out. Confirm your meter on a known live source before and after. A silent panel is not a safe panel. Test before touch, test after install, test again when someone else has been in the room. Harris, what is the minimum you verify after installing any device? Polarity is right. Ground continuity exists. Torque is to spec. The cover is on. Straight, no conductor pinched, no yoke cocked. If GFCI is required, the device is GFCI and it's wired with line and load correct. The switch is 3-way, the common is on the dark screw, and travelers are where they should be. If a dimmer's in a gang box, the rating is derated and labeled. If box fill is exceeded, the box is changed or the splicing plan is changed. Then label at the panel so your signatures travel. We did a gauntlet where Harris barked orders until the multimeter felt like a second pulse. Wire a duplex correctly. Now reverse polarity intentionally and explain every light on the tester. Fix it. Wire a GFCI line only. Prove it trips and resets. Extend protection to the load. Label downstream. Prove it trips the downstream. Wire a split receptacle. Break the correct tab. Show top switched. Bottom always hot. Place the switch with the dimmer rated for the lamp type. Light. Derate correctly because we ganged it with a second switch. Explain heat. Show that box fill still passes. Install a 3-way pair. Identify the common without guessing by tracing the feed and load. Swap the common and show how it fails. Fix it and explain why travelers are not neutrals. Mount every cover plate straight because ugly is a kind of unsafe that calls the inspector SIs like a bell. Maria, what about accessibility and spacing? Devices must be reachable without moving furniture in required areas. Heights follow the project standard. Spacing follows the plan and code. Outlets too far apart invite extension cords, and cords invite heat under rugs and dust that burns. He quizzed us on little things that turn into big ones. Strip length per the device gauge. No copper hairs splayed from stranded wire under a screw. Use a back box or extension ring if the finish is too proud. Keep conductors below the yoke so a plate screw never bites a wire. Identify travelers by color or tape. So maintenance in 5 years does not become an archaeological dig. We worked until sweat ran into our eyes, then worked 5 minutes more to learn what our hands did at the edge of fatigue. Harris kept asking why. Why torque not feel? Why clockwise, not counterclockwise? Why ground first? Why line and load must be right on a GFCI, even if the face powers either way? Why you never trust a silent breaker? Why you never leave a hot device hanging out of a box? He told a story about a rental whose outlets felt loose. When tenants plugged in a heater, the landlord ignored it. Loose contacts arced under higher load. The plate browned, then blackened. A rug melted into shape, a small miracle that it did not light the room. Someone had used the word cosmetic to describe a tilted yoke. Harris said cosmetic is the first layer of safety. A straight device face doesn't pinch the plug just so. A snug device doesn't let the blades wiggle and arc. A labeled panel dose and T make a tenant turn off the wrong heater and leave the wrong one cooking. We closed the day by testing every device we had installed. The 3-light tester blinked its little grammar. The multimeter gave numbers that didn't lie. Maria called out voltages. I called out interpretations. Harris didn't smile, but he didn't correct us either. I wrote in my notebook as the room cooled. Hot to brass, neutral to silver, ground to green, loop clockwise, torque to spec, ground the box, not just the device. GFCI line and load in the right places, label downstream. Test and reset. 3-way means common plus travelers. Find the dark screw and prove the feed and load. Dimmer matches load type and is derated if ganged. Cut fins only when the instructions say so, and then write the new number where someone can read it later. Box fill is math, not vibes. Accessibility and spacing matter because cords are liars. Test before touch and after install. Covers on, screws straight, no device cockeyed. Promise made, promise kept. Maria leaned against the training wall, hair damp at the temples, voice smaller than usual. So devices are just tiny promises that can burn a building. Harris? Devices are where a hand meets your work. They are where a mother plugs a kettle, where a kid pushes in a nightlight, where a tired worker hits a switch and expects the room to light, not bite. If you do this part lazy, nothing else matters. He looked at the rows of white faces with their neat plates and level screws and labeled circuits. His voice dropped to the tone he used for sentences we would remember in a fire. Harris. Lesson 1, polarity saves lives. Lesson 2, protection belongs exactly where people are vulnerable. Lesson 3, devices are not ornaments, they are promises. Keep them. We shut off the panel. The room fell quiet, except for the tick-tick of cooling metal. I realized the small tools had felt heavier than the conduit bender. The 3-light tester looked like a toy in the morning. It looked like a verdict now. Harris said, tomorrow we would chase liars. Some switches work until you move the travelers. Some GFCs power a circuit and protect no one because someone landed load where lines should be. Some outlets look fine until a heater tells the truth. We'd hunt those lies and make them speak before they turn into heat and silence. Coming up next, episode 23. The switch that lies, the outlet that burns.